Welcome to Control Your Career, a podcast to help you conquer uncertainty, shatter imposter syndrome, and rise above the expectations imposed by others. My name is Julia Toothaker, and I am the career coach and strategist at Ride the Tide Collective, my career development company where I offer career coaching courses, and I have a plethora of free content. I have been doing this work for over a decade, and I want to help empower professionals like you to find clarity, navigate your current career with finesse, and propel yourself toward career advancement in alignment with your unique personality, preferences, and values. This podcast is a great place to start your journey toward controlling your career. Season 10 is all about managers and specifically what managers want and expect from their employees and teams. I've brought on people managers with at least 10 years of experience managing who are also currently managers to help you understand their mindset and expectations. Each episode will have action items that you can apply to your unique situation and consider in your relationship with your manager. You can find this episode and more at ridethetidecollective.com. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn, where I post career information and inspiration to help you control your career. Welcome, everyone. We are back for the manager's perspective. And my guest today, we met through another event that we were both doing. Jon Harper is the regional VP in the sales division for a large human capital management organization. And I heard him on a panel for an event that I was also presenting at. And I knew that I had to have him on as a guest. Jon, thank you so much for being here and agreeing to impart your wisdom to my audience.
Yeah, of course, Julia. It was great to be a part of that event with you. Had so much fun just being able to add value to hundreds of people that were able to join us, and excited to be on today. Excited to be able to answer some questions for your listeners and hopefully leave them with something to take away. So pumped to be here.
Yes, I love that. Okay, we're just going to jump right in, and I want you to tell us who you are, talk about your career up to this point, and specifically what got you into people management.
Yeah, so I've been in leadership and people management for, gosh, this is year 9. I got warned when I decided when I was considering getting into people leadership. Hey, don't do it for the money, because sometimes performers can out earn you. You got to do it because you're passionate about it. And luckily for me, that lined up with what my values were. And so, like my big passion is seeing people win, seeing people grow and evolve. And this is such a fun journey to go on as you watch people hit their goals and evolve into the people they want to be, right? Like at the end of the day, yes, people have goals and aspirations and they want to climb ladders and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, like the most fun part for me is watching people that maybe enter in an organization one way, as a person, as a human, and then evolve into skill sets that not only help their job, but it helps them as people, and eventually, maybe as parents or as spouses or as neighbors or as community members. And so that's what I'm passionate about as a people leader. And it's been a really fun journey over the last 9 years.
Amazing. Okay, I want to provide some context because I think specifically being in sales, you've
Yep.
been in sales for the majority of your career, and
Yep.
you went into people management, and you mentioned it right at the beginning that if you're doing it for the money, you
Yeah.
shouldn't. So can you talk a little bit?
Yeah.
I'm going a little off script here because I think in sales, this is something that I've had clients talk to me about where they're making such good money on the sales side, but they
Yeah.
love the management side. So can you kind of talk about that dichotomy and maybe choosing to step away from like straight sales and going into the people management side?
Yeah, I mean, it is, and you use the right word, right? It's a dichotomy that you have to choose what, there is a tension there.
Mhm.
And, full disclosure, I don't want to make it seem like it's, I don't want to put, glitter all over it. Like that, there was a tough conversation that had to happen with my wife and I, where it's like, hey, this is what I'm passionate about. And it just wasn't all about the money. It's not that I don't make good money, what I'm doing, but, at the end of the day, I just have a belief system that I don't want to get to the end of my life and be somewhere that I have a lot of money, but I wonder what if in my
Mm,
purpose, if that makes sense,
yes,
right? So
absolutely.
for me, I got there fairly early. I was very fortunate to get there fairly early in my career, and I believe that like a lot of people face a lot of those pivot points, or injunction points where it's like, man, this has been fulfilling for, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, whatever that is. And you feel yourself pulled to a different level of your purpose. And for me, when I got into people leadership, that's what that was. It was, hey, I did
Mm,
fairly well in sales, um, you know, and made really good money. But I've always, I go back to something that my grandfather told me when I was younger, and my grandfather died. The one that I'm talking about died when I was 7, and I still remember this conversation. He was just like,
oh,
"You will look back on what you wanted to do, not what you did do." And
mm,
I never wanted to like get to that point, and wonder what if. And so for me, that was the pivot point, and I just decided, hey, listen, if I go all in on this, if I impact lives and make less money, it was okay with me. So luckily for me, I've made pretty good money and I've impacted some people along the way. So it's worked out pretty good.
yes, I love that. Okay, we're not even 5 minutes into this, and there's so much wisdom already being shared. This is gonna be such a great episode, John. Okay, you've touched on this a little bit, but I want you to go through kind of more in depth with how would you describe your overall people management style with your teams? And then how has that evolved over the years?
Yeah, so man, I know this is a 30-45 minute pod. So evolution, I'm going to shorten for the sake of your audience. But I got to tell you that the first time as I got into leadership, I just wanted to be liked. Like
Mm,
very very straightforwardly, I wanted to be liked. I wanted people to like me. I wanted to not stir the pot. And what I realized over time was clarity is kindness and candor is kindness as a leader. And if you say it in a respectful and an empathetic way, it's not fair to people to not be candid with them. And especially in the sales side of an organization, listen, like we're in a performance based side of the organization, right? So I have a responsibility to the organization to deliver on what the responsibility is, right? And so to not be kind and candid with my people on where they stand is actually very, I kind of look at it as semi disrespectful to them that they
mm,
can't like. I kind of look at it as if I can't be candid with you, it's almost like a sign that you're not mature enough to handle it, which I don't think people feel that way. I think I
yeah.
I think leaders that shortcut their employees with trying to soften the blow, um, can come across a little bit disrespectful in that like, hey, I'm an adult,
Mm,
like, and I want to do better. And I believe that all of my people want to do better and they want to strive for excellence and they want to reach their potential. And so if I don't coach them directly in a loving, kind, empathetic way, I'm kind of cheating them, right?
mhm,
So
mhm.
what's that evolution has become, and that's not a silver bullet, right? Some people do take that offensively, and like that's part of leadership, and you gotta add with that. But I would say most people really do appreciate if you say it in a kind tone and have the right body language and do it in the right setting. They really do appreciate the clarity and the kindness that comes along with that candor. And listen, sometimes it's not a fit for the role. Sometimes
Mhm.
it's just time of life. And at the end of the day, like if they know I care about them as people, that clarity, um, it goes a long way with, just being direct and being honest and them not having to guess where they are.
Yes. Okay. I love this because this aligns so much with what I share with my
Yeah.
clients and on social media. We talk a lot about how you're receiving information, and that's been a theme this season on the podcast as well. You, as an employee, have to understand that I would say the majority of managers are not out to get you. They want to help you improve. And
Hmm.
specifically on the sales side, I love that you said that. Like, you have to be so direct and so honest because it is performance based. So if
Yeah.
you're not performing, that's
Yeah.
not good. We got to solve the problem. But so many people take feedback personally. And
Yeah.
that's one thing that I try to impart onto people. It's like, is it you? Like, are you twisting
Yeah.
something because of a past experience and you're putting that onto your manager? Or is your manager truly being unkind to you
Mhm.
and helping people discern that? So, oh, I love that you said that. It's just it reinforcing these
Yeah.
messages for people. Ugh. Okay. So let's go into the hiring process. So I want to ask kind of a collection of questions,
Okay.
walking us through the hiring process for an employee. So let's start with when you are hiring somebody, what are you looking for on the resume and in the interview process? We want those like really tangible tips.
Yeah. So I'm gonna give you one tip on the resume, and then I may throw a curveball, and then I'm gonna give you the interview process if that's cool. Okay.
That's great.
So again, like coming from the sales side, right? I think candidates put way too much of what they do, not the results that they get. Right. So like as a hiring manager, like a really easy tip for whoever's listening on the other side of this pod is like I, please don't take this disrespectfully. How you got it is less concerning that than to me than that you did get it. So if
Mm,
you're again like this is coming from a sales lingo, right? So but if you're 150% of plan 10 years in a row and you don't have that on your resume, like that's a massive mistake.
right.
But telling me I prospect people and I manage pipeline and like I'm gonna assume all that. I'm
Mm,
assuming if you're applying for a similar role, you're doing that. So the tactical tip number one, very little what I do every day, very much what the result is of what you do. Right. So that's the resume side. The other side is candidly, outside of what I just gave that little tip, ironically, I don't look at a resume. The only thing I look at as a resume is how how did you perform and are you a risk to leave within 12 to 24 months based on previous history.
ooh,
Those are the two things I look at as a leader of leaders. So
okay.
right now I lead 3 sales executives that have their own teams. The filter that I use is, are you going to bounce in 2 years? Because remember, like again, like you mentioned at the top of the pod, I work for a Fortune 200 company. When you get a sales, and this is not to brag out, this more to brag on the company than anything else. When you get a role and you put that on your LinkedIn, you're going to get hit up right now, right? Like you're
Mhm.
automatically you're going to get inquiries immediately, right? So if I see, all right, you're going to be your experience has told me you're going to be gone in 12 to 24 months. That's a little bit of a red flag. And then the other thing is like, then I look at the accomplishments. If I can check those 2 boxes, now I want to talk to you. I want
Mm,
you. I want you as the person. Can you articulate? Can you navigate a conversation? Can you navigate a curveball thrown at you? Can you navigate an unexpected ask from me or my sales executives or right? Like because at the end of the day, again, this is me in sales. Like and I say me in sales, but really like these days, Julie, like in business, every day there's a curveball. Every day there's a conversation that you think is going to go left that goes right. And if you can't navigate that, again, like so
mhm.
that I would say 80% of my weight in terms of interviewing people is me and you having a conversation. Are you able to go with the flow? Are you able to be prepared and not panic? Are you able to articulate your value prop based on your past that you can bring into your future potentially with us? Those are the types of things I look for. And then every single interview, I always provide a piece of constructive feedback mid interview, and I want to see if you can. I want to see if you can adjust because
Mm,
to me, this is my coaching to my sales execs. You can be the most talented person in the world if you can't take coaching. Like the world changes too much,
yeah,
right? To not take coaching. So if you take coaching, you take it offensively, or you say, "Oh, that totally makes this happens a lot." That totally makes sense, and then you keep doing the same thing right? Like you're that person and it doesn't right. And so if you're that person, I know, okay, this may not be right, the right
yeah,
fit. So
yeah,
I know that's a little bit abnormal because most people want to focus on the resume and what to put and what not to put and how to
yeah,
articulate. But for me, I want to know, is this person the right fit? And is this person somebody that we can depend on long term
right.
and can adjust to coaching? Those are the things I look for.
Oh man. Okay. I'm sure you just ruffled some feathers
Yeah.
with what you said.
Yeah.
But here's the context I want to provide as a career coach, because I
For
think
sure.
that what happens in terms of the noise out in the world is you need to have your resume, it needs to look like this. And then you need to conduct the interview like this. And you have to do these things. And if you don't do these things, then you're never going to get the interview. And there's all these like absolutes out there and all this stuff. And constantly what I'm trying to tell people is you have no idea who the hiring manager is and what they
Totally.
care about. So you have to take this general advice
Mm-hmm.
and do the best that you can. So the benefit that you have right now is that if somebody is going to come work for you, they could listen to this podcast and
Totally.
hear this and know exactly what they need to focus on their
Yep.
resume and in the interview, right? That's the kind of research I think people need to
Yeah.
be thinking about doing. But so the resume side, I want to say the focus on results. I will tell you, almost every manager and every recruiter I have talked to says that.
Yep.
And if you are in sales, anytime I get a sales client, I'm like, oh, you're the easiest resume in the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
Because it is all results. And if you can't produce those results, I'm
That's
like, you need to rethink sales because
it.
it's not going to be it's not
That's
going to be a
it.
good fit for you. So let's talk about that interview process. I think that's a
Yeah.
very unique way to approach the interview. But I also think, again, this is so helpful for people to understand that there is no one size fits all
Yeah.
to the approach. And when you're in sales, I feel like you have to be able to pivot the conversation because you never know who's going to be sitting across from you.
Yeah.
But then also for you, you have to find people that are going to they're going to translate well, right? Whether you're doing something over Zoom or you're in person, you want to get basically the vibe for that person, for lack of a
Yeah.
better phrase,
For
and
sure.
make sure that your clients are going to read well for them also, like that you want to have that rapport. So I love your approach to interviews there. I think that's such a great way to go about it.
Yeah.
Um, Okay, so let's keep going through this process. So let's say you have a couple different candidates and you have two people who are very similar, which I
Yep.
think happens in sales pretty often, right? You've got two
Yep.
rock stars, they've got great numbers, they're reading really well. How do you decide between those two people?
So I have this happen, to your point, often. Here's the technique I use. I will call both candidates and I will say, "Hey, we're still in the consideration process. Thought you did a great job. You're in the top. Usually it's like, hey, you're in the top 3 candidates, right? Um, Before we made our consideration, obviously we want whoever we're going to make the offer to. We want to give the best chance to ourselves as an organization for
Mhm.
the offer to be accepted. What questions do you have for me as we're still finalizing consideration? That gives me a window into. It doesn't mean that it's the end all be all. But a tip for the listeners, right, is when that question's asked, is probably not and we talked about this in the WBL session, is like, even then is probably not the time to be like, hey, so what's your policy on PTO? Or what's your hey, walk me through the comp plan or what? And it doesn't mean it's not relevant to you. Please
Mhm.
don't, for the listeners, right? And for the employee, that doesn't mean it's not relevant. It's really important. You want to make sure you're getting your worth. However, what that tells me as a hiring manager is you're more worried about what you're getting from the organization than what you can give to it.
Mm,
And so to me, again, the interview process, you're probably going to show your best self there.
right.
So if you're already going, talk to me about PTO, talk to me about, flexibility with base, talk to me about remote work options, talk to me about if that's already on your mind,
Mhm.
that's only going to become exponential 6 months from now.
Right.
Right. So that's my technique when I have candidates, and it usually irons itself out. It's interesting that way, because the way I word it is a little bit of a, hey, where is your head really? And it
Mhm.
opens a door a little bit to the people that have already been thinking this way, but they just didn't want to Say so. Tip to the listeners, like, until you get the offer, like once you get the offer, negotiate. You have full, because for at that point, I know you're my gal or my guy. Like, we're gonna hire you. So here's the other thing on the other side of that. Once I make an offer, I will be the advocate for you if you say I need an extra $5,000 or whatever the number is. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example. We had a candidate was coming from another large organization. Uh, they compared their benefits package to their current one and us, and it was like a $4,800 difference, right? Annually for their family. I was on the phone with HR that day as the regional VP on behalf of the candidate because I was like,
Mm-hmm.
this is the person we want. This is why I'm making a business case on behalf of the candidate at that point, right? So just know if you're the candidate, if you prove yourself to be the right one throughout the entire process, I promise you, I'm not the only leader that will advocate for you and champion you coming on. So there will be a time for you to be able to negotiate there, and I can guarantee and trust. Like, listen, for the employees, the recruiters get paid on placements too, guys, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like they want, if I select you, they want you to come on board. So you now have a team of people working for you. So I'm just encouraging everyone listening, like, there is a time there. It's not like companies don't care about what your asks are. But for
Mm-hmm.
me, when I make that call, when I have two employees that what I look for is your mindset truly in the I want to add to the organization, or is it
Mm-hmm.
in the, well, what can I want to make sure I get what I need? I know that's a long-winded
Yes.
answer, but hopefully that helps.
No, I think that's so helpful. And just to back that up, I had a client that also happened to in a completely different industry,
Yeah,
completely different part of the nation, different level as well. And so it was actually same medical, and the person really wanted them and ended up getting them about the same, like another $5,000 specifically to cover medical
yep,
costs. So it is possible to do that. We
totally,
just have two examples right there.
100%.
Okay, I love all of this because this is so helpful for people to understand the thought process. And here's what I want to challenge people who are listening, because I'm in the career space. So I see what other career coaches, and I'm using quotes for those
Yeah,
listening because
yeah,
not everybody is qualified or has the experience to talk about these topics.
totally.
But there is a narrative right now around, it's all about you as the employee. Like, get the
Yeah,
bag, get whatever you can. It's all
yeah,
about you, the salary, all this stuff. And I get it. You need to have, your threshold as an employee 100%, but
hmm
you have to be so cognizant of how that comes across. And I think that your example and talking about that is exactly why. Because we have people that are saying, fight for these things. It's
yeah,
corporate. They don't care about you, all this stuff. And I'm like, you cannot have that attitude going
mm,
into an interview. If that is
yeah,
your attitude, you're not going to get chosen.
yeah,
Right? So if you're somebody that's doing interviews right now, like, check your mindset
yeah,
going into it. Like, do you have to play the game a little bit? Maybe, maybe you need to
yeah,
switch your mindset for that interview, but you can't listen to the people that are telling you to be so selfish that
yeah.
it comes across negatively to the hiring manager. And this was a perfect example of why.
And I will tell y'all, like, I can read it. I can feel it, right? Like, we're
Hmm.
all people. Like, I can see it. And it doesn't mean that it's not there. It may not be back end justification based on a previous experience or things of that nature. Um, but the worst hires I make, or have made, I try to make less of them now. But the worst hires I make is when somebody has that demeanor, but I try to make excuses due to results. Because what ends up happening
Hmm.
is that heart posture carries over. And I use this line a lot, and this is really only for corporate America, Fortune 500, but I'm going to use it because I feel like it's applicable to your audience. Is, listen, myself and the people that I hire, I voluntarily work for a Fortune 200 publicly traded for profit company. There are pros and cons to that,
Hmm.
right? The cons, as soon as they show up, if somebody shows up with a heart posture of you owe me, or I'm trying to get the bag, or I'm trying to get, as soon as the con of a Fortune 200 for profit publicly traded company shows up, it's that's not fair. Why is that happening? And you're on a very, like, the slope is very tough to recover from.
Yeah.
So I feel, I understand that, like, hey, you don't want to get taken advantage of. You want to get with your
Mhm.
worth. Like, I got you. Like, I'm with you, right? But
Mhm.
just know, like, heart posture is important. And again, I'm not saying this is existent in every organization, but there are leaders out there. To me, there are more of them than we realize, that will fight for not only advocating for your initial pay or your initial compensation, but will fight for your continual compensation and your continual advancement. And you're like, there are more of those than you think. The bad people are just
Absolutely.
louder. That's
Yes,
all.
yes. Oh, that's gonna be a clip. That is 100% gonna be a
Yeah.
clip. Hey there, Julia here. Is this episode resonating with you? Maybe it's got you questioning how you can better communicate with your manager, team, or just learn more about how to control your career. Well, I've busted into this episode to tell you about my career action coaching. Career coaching is more than job search and resumes. It's also about managing the day-to-day situations that come up in your career. This coaching option is perfect for the career management situations that you're dealing with, along with other career-related challenges or goals. This is a flexible coaching option to help tackle specific topics to move forward efficiently and confidently. Not all coaching requires a 6-month commitment. Career Action Coaching is 3-hour-long sessions that can be customized to your unique needs. Before committing, let's discuss what you need in my complimentary career coaching clarity call. The link will be in the show notes and the description for this episode. Now let's get back to the show. Okay, I want to go back. You had mentioned in kind of the resume interview that you try to look for people that have longevity. So they've been in positions for 12 to 24 months, which I absolutely understand, especially in sales, because that's so much relationship building that has to happen and that takes time.
Yep.
Talk to me about how layoffs impact that, because not only have I had clients impacted by it, but we're obviously seeing it everywhere,
Yeah.
especially within tech. So what does that look like when you have people who don't have a choice in terms
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
longevity? What can you go into that a little bit more?
100%. And it's a reality, right? Like, I think, as the economy continues to be wavy, and we're going to, we're in an election year, like, there's uncertainty, right? So I think it's a good point. Um, the question I ask around layoffs is always the same, which is, great, what have you been doing to prepare for the next role since? And if
Mm,
the answer is something of the effect of, yeah, I've just really been putting my resume out there and I've really been, I'm not saying that's the wrong answer. What I'm looking for is, how are you preparing yourself? Because, very few, I'm not saying nobody, very few people are putting their resume out 9 hours a day, 5 days a week,
right.
right? So what I'm looking for in that answer is, candidly, like, a lot of transparency. So I'll give you an example. So I had a candidate went through this, moved from Texas to New York, um, for a few years. Pandemic happened. Obviously, New York has much more stringent, had more much more stringent COVID stipulations than a lot of states, and so she was out of work for, I don't know, a year or so.
Mm,
And when I asked that question, she was very. Her answer was the best answer I've heard, which was something to the effect of, honestly, I started to apply to a lot of places. It took me about a month to realize that I had a lot of free time on my hands, and it was really difficult. And I had to start doing some self-discovery. And
mm,
I figured out that my demographic, like, I knew my heart wasn't in this space anymore. I wanted to get into this space. So I started taking courses at night to do this. And it was really tough on me because I'm a single mom of two kids. And so it forced me to, and this is going to get deep a little bit, but again, it's to me, as the hiring manager, it shows vulnerability to understand how to self-analyze, how to evolve. She goes, I had to start to go to therapy to figure out how to navigate being a single mom, unemployed, and learn a new industry. And I was like,
mm.
like, please know, like, that vulnerability is not required to get
Right.
attention from an employer. But what it did for me was, like, she's a human.
Yeah.
Like, she, You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it allowed me to see, oh, you're not trying to put a superwoman cape on and be like, I know I
Hmm.
got laid off. I haven't had a job for a year. We're gonna grind through it. Like, no, like, like it's
Yeah.
okay. And it doesn't, and she didn't say it in a tone of like, she wasn't throwing herself a pity party. She wasn't, right. But she was like, so what I had, what she did was she looped it back around. And she goes, so what I think that did for me was it gave me resilience that I didn't have in my previous careers, which the
Mhm.
next career I have will be able to allow me to evolve with whatever is going to come my way. And because I have tools that I didn't have before, I can now be a single mother to the two kids I have and not over rotate and take time away from them or my
Mhm.
like she looped it back to the value of what we would get if we brought her on. And I was like,
Oh.
okay. Like, and she had obviously she had thought about it. She
Mhm.
was intentional, but she had a story behind it that allowed her A to be human and B to show her character within that story. So that's probably a little bit deeper than your listeners wanted to go down that rabbit hole, but I think it just shows like don't try to fake it.
Yeah.
Don't,
Yeah.
show what you really are doing. And I think also like taking the time as you're, going through the layoff season, get better, get new skill sets. The world's evolving while you're out of the workforce. So try to keep up as best you can.
Yes, yes. And I want to put in my little tip here for people that are like, I don't have the money, I don't have this. Go to your library. Go to
Oh,
your local library. I try to post this on LinkedIn like every couple
yes.
of months. Go to your local library and see what online resources they have because a lot of them have LinkedIn Learning or Coursera or some
Oh my
type of
gosh.
course skill something or other. So if anybody is coming at us
Yes.
about not
No.
having money, go to the freaking library.
I just saw a post from MIT. They're offering first year student courses for free online.
Ugh,
MIT. Like
yeah, there
don't
you go.
so to your point, Julie, like you don't have to you don't have to spend $10,000 to
No,
be like
no.
just use the resource you have when you're unemployed, which is the resource
Mhm.
of time. Use it wisely. You can get farther than you think.
Yes, I love that. Okay, I want to shift into, you have your team, you're hired as a manager, you're doing one-on-ones, right? What does that look for you? How does that look for you? Like, what is the structure? How do you conduct your one-on-ones?
So my one-on-ones are semi-informal. They're structured, but they're semi-informal. I don't talk about a lot of business in one-on-ones. I talk about, again, on the sales side, like I talk about deals all day, every
Yeah.
day. In a one-on-one, really I want to figure out like, do you have the tools that you need, the support you need to succeed at your job for that week? Because I have one-on-ones with my people every week. Hey, how are you feeling? Like again, I lead leaders, so but even when I led performers, it's like, hey, what's going on this week? How can I help support? What do you need me to help you get in front of before this
Mhm.
happens? And then probably once a month, I have a one-on-one that's just about career pathing.
Oh, I love
Um,
that.
and like I have a foundational belief as a leader that the possibility of all 25 people that work for me today working for me 5 years from now is pretty zero. Like so, like I look at it like there's a big part of my job as a leader that is to prepare you for what's next, whether it's in this organization or not.
Right.
So I want to know what that looks like for you. Whether that's you want to start a business in 3 years, whether that's you want to climb the leadership ladder, whether that's you want to go into operations versus sales, whether that's you want to go into training, whether that's you want to be a podcaster, whether that like whatever that thing is, right? Like
Yeah.
there's not a wrong answer to me. And I think leaders
Mhm.
make a big mistake. And I think employees may make this mistake too, where it's like we hide,
Mm.
employees hide what their real ambition is because it doesn't quote unquote align with the corporate agenda. And
Yes.
leaders make the mistake of not really getting in the world of their people. So listen. I have a guy right now that does real estate on the side. I have a guy that has an insurance company and does Turo on the side. I got a guy that is a pastor on the weekends. I got to like it, to completely dismiss anything that's involved outside of the four walls and the conversations in that organization, both for the employee and the employer. I think it may shortcut some opportunity there, right?
Yeah.
And so once a month I have those career pathing conversations and there is no conversation off limits. I'm okay if this isn't your forever home. Candidly, when I started at my organization, it wasn't my forever home, and I'm 12 years in. So like I was ready to leave after, like, I walked in, it was like 2 years, I'm out. Right. Here I am 12 years later, like life happens. So
Yeah.
yeah, and one-on-ones, it's much less structured, and I try to open a door for people to express what's going on in their world. And I think as leaders, it's really important that we understand that like they have life, and
Yeah.
if we don't connect with them, like people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I try to use that one-on-one time to express that.
Oh, I love that, John. That's so good. And I have to put the caveat out there though, because I know somebody is going to be like, if I share that information, it's going to get me fired.
Yeah,
I
fair.
know. I know that that's
Get it?
coming. And I think that that is where you obviously have built trust with your employees, where they know that that's not the case.
Yeah,
And I think that when we're talking about, these experiences that people have had in their past and all of that, like obviously we have to honor that. But
yeah,
you as an employee also have to look at the person that is managing you and read the room, right? Like
totally. Yep.
if they're going to be out to get you, you
Yeah,
have an inclination, right? Based
yeah,
on how they're talking to you, the questions that they're asking you, all of that. So
yeah,
if it's not a safe environment for you to
yeah,
talk about your
totally.
career or the things that you're passionate about, don't do
Yeah.
it.
Well, and like the like the easy thing, again, like I'm in sales, so it's like, so to bring up your side hustle when you're 50% of your quota is probably not a great idea, right? Like again, like it's like, to ask for 2 weeks off to go do something that you're passionate about that isn't company aligned when you're, 52% of plan, like not great, right? But there's people that are, I listen, I will be the first one to say, like, I have told some of my salespeople before, hey, you're 200% a plan. If you want to take a month and like go do whatever, listen, I'm saying that now because I think it's really important that like performance does matter. Like,
Mhm.
so I think that I think you mentioned earlier, it's like, there's this narrative out there that it's like, well, like, you got to go, like, you got to do your own thing. It's like, yes, and if the employer that you're working for is paying your mortgage and is paying your car note and is paying for daycare and like, I
Mhm.
love your passion, but you have to be like, we have to, and myself included, I have to be able to honor the fact that that's happening and not just be like, well, they don't deserve my work ethic because I'm not good. Like, so I think there's a balance there.
Yeah.
Um, and I think to your point, just read the room and you'll know. And like, if but just know that like the blanket statement of like, well, I'm an employee, so I'm as valuable. Like, yes, and just be aware.
Yes.
So
Yeah, it can't be those absolute statements. There's always
yeah,
an and, there's always a but, like there's always something else that needs to be considered.
totally.
Yeah. So, okay, this is a perfect segue into talking about PIPs, which is performance improvement plans.
Yes.
Some organizations have different names, but that's like the most common name. So, talk to me about how you handle that. How does somebody even get to that point? Can they
Yeah.
recover? Like, let's lay it out for everybody.
Okay. So performance plans to me, I got told yesterday that I was good at this, which I don't really know. I don't I don't really know how to take that, but I'm gonna take it as a positive and just keep it rolling. So listen, performance plans, to answer your last question, can people come back with it from it? Absolutely, right? I think it comes when, to me, the people that I've ever put on performance plans is they're either checked out or they're not coachable.
Mm,
It usually falls into one of those two buckets, right? And it doesn't mean that it's one's better than the other. It just means, most people fall into one of those two buckets. Now, every once in a while, somebody will fall into the bucket of, hey, this job is just not for them. We hired you. We thought your experience. And by the way, you thought it. We thought it. We thought it was awesome. We're 6 months into this thing. You're miserable. We're not pumped because the performance isn't there. The show up like my line to everybody that I ever put on a performance plan is like, especially if it's not a fit, we spend way too much time at work to be miserable. Like,
Yes.
you're stressed. We're frustrated with your performance. Let's just go find something different. Like that, right? But the majority of performance plans is like, hey, we've coached you for, again, I work in corporate America, so the HR red tape is real.
Hmm.
And so I can't just be like, you're a performance plan today, right? I got to coach you to that. So my encouragement to the employer or the employees listening to this is like, if you're getting continual coaching, the coaching isn't because your leader's bored. Like
Hmm.
the coaching is for a reason, and the coaching is to get you better because usually it's not, hey, we need you to get better because you're awesome so far, so we want to get you to the next level. Usually the coaching is, especially if it's continual and it's pretty consistent, if the coaching is corrective in a lot of cases, it's you take that as a sign of like, all right, if I was way above what the expectation was, would I be getting this much
Hmm.
corrective or constructive criticism? I don't know that I would.
Yeah.
Take that as a sign. And I had one employee do this ever, so it's very difficult to do. The best thing you can do is if you feel that tension, ask your supervisor, like ask your leader, and just say, "Hey, I just want to check in because again, this is me as a leader talking now. Like, I don't like telling you you don't or you're not doing good." Like, so I use coaching kind of as a mask of like, hey, maybe
Mhm.
try this, maybe try that. And in the back of my head, I'm having conversations with my leader going, "Man, I don't know if they're going to make it because they're doing this
Mhm.
wrong and that wrong. And then I'm coaching them there and they're not doing this." And like, so if you are feeling that tension and you're not getting the directness of, hey, if we don't see a change in 60 days, this is the deal, ask the question. Like, own
Mhm.
that. I'm a big believer in owning your career. And, you may not love the answer, but at least you'll be clear.
Yes, yes. Okay. We got to discuss this a little bit more because I think what happens, and I hear this from people. I didn't see the pip coming.
Yeah.
I didn't see it. No, there
Yeah.
were signs.
Totally.
I hate to break it to you, but
Yep.
there were signs. Now, is every manager and every HR person good at their job and doing the PIP the right
Yeah.
way? No, there's always going to be outliers. Always going to be outliers. But
Yep.
I would say for the majority of people, the signs were there. How the manager is talking to you, what
Yeah.
they're talking to you about. If it is this constructive criticism that you're constantly getting feedback on, that's your sign that
Yep.
something is not clicking, something is not working. And so I
Yep.
just want to encourage everybody out there, if that's what it's starting to feel like for you, I love it. Go talk to your manager because if they're
Yeah.
giving you the feedback, then it means that they think that you can improve.
Totally.
But if you're putting that wall up, for yourself, maybe a past experience, again, we've been talking about that throughout this episode. If a past experience is making you put that wall up, or you're getting bad advice from people
Yeah.
who really aren't qualified to give you good career advice,
Totally.
then it's not going to work in your favor. So, yeah,
Yep.
being open, being honest, asking for that feedback as an employee, I think that's so, so important. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. In that same vein, let's talk about growth in our positions, right? So we're doing things well, you have your team. How do you keep them growing? I feel like especially within sales, what are the opportunities there when you have those people who are really hitting and blowing their targets out
Yeah.
of the water, or maybe they've been doing so well that they get bored, right? What does that look like? How do you compensate for that as a leader?
Yeah, like listen, salespeople are inherently ADD, so they get bored real quick. So myself included. So full disclosure, I'm enemy number one in that category, right? So, yeah, like it's interesting. When people are doing well, I try to cultivate a leadership of growth, and the way that I do that is like every quarter, we have leadership like we have leadership slash growth roundtable. So I want to understand like where you want to go,
Mm.
right? Again, like I lead a group of 25 individuals now through 3 teams, so like it's more of a macro event more than a one-on-one setting.
Mhm.
But again, like I go back to what I just said in the last question, which is like own your career. Like I was told this very early on. If you're doing really well and you're bored in your position, or you want to grow somewhere, or you want to explore different avenues or whatever, like this is gonna sound really drastic on this pod, but like ain't nobody coming to save you. Like you got to do it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like you got to you got to put your big boy, big girl panties on and be like, here we
Mhm.
go. Like, okay, this is what I want to do. And just newsflash for everybody. If that's what you're going to do, don't expect 100% support from your supervisor that wants to keep you on their team forever. Okay? So like don't get discouraged. Be like, oh, Andy's gonna be mad. Yeah, he's not gonna be pumped. He's losing a really good producer. Like, what did you think was gonna happen? Because guess what Andy's
Yes.
got to go do? If you leave, Andy's got to go hire somebody else, got to train him up. He's got to see if the right. It's the nature of, so I'm saying that in a little bit in a humorous way because it's like I have yet to leave a position even for going for a better one, even when I was approached to go for a better one, that
Mhm.
my leader was not like, are you sure you want to, like, they were kind of coercing me out of it because they didn't want, right. And so I say that because even though hopefully you get into an organization that has a growth and leadership, culture.
Mhm.
What I've found is most organizations don't intentionally. What I've found
Mm-mm.
is most organizations as a macro may, but micro don't, because
Mhm.
leaders are afraid of going and having to find new talent and develop and grow and mature because it's freaking work.
Yep. Yep.
like like it's work. So again, like, as candid as I can be in that question is like, own your career. If you're doing well, own it, right? It's okay to ask questions, expect pushback, expect, and don't, and here's the other thing in this, I feel like this is an appropriate time to say this is like, don't hold it against your leader if they're trying to show you things that you may not see that's not 100% positive. They're not trying to be
Mm.
discouraging to you as a
Right.
person. They're looking out for their best interest because they're human.
Mhm.
That makes sense. So like,
Yes.
don't be, I heard this very early on. It's like, try not to follow people, follow principles. If
Mm.
the person has the principles and the character you admire, that's the leader you want to follow. But even that leader is going to disappoint you every once in a while. And usually this
Absolutely.
circumstance is one that you're going to be like, dang, I didn't see that coming from Andy. Like,
Mhm.
he's usually so supportive. Mary's usually so sweet. It's
Mhm.
not because they're mean, it's not because their character changed, just because they're human. And all they're thinking about in the back of their head is like, dang, it took me 6 candidates to get you. I'm gonna have to go find, like, it's gonna take 9 months to come get you again. Right. So
Yeah.
just know that as you grow, own that, own what that looks like. And know that the opposition isn't for any other reason than, if people didn't want to keep you, they'd be like, great, see you later. Right.
Mhm.
So it's a
Mhm.
good sign that you're at a precipice of something that could be, the next step in your journey.
Yes. Okay. Oh man, I have so many things. I have so many things. First is not putting people on pedestals. That
Totally.
was one thing that I learned very early in my career. That example that you gave is exactly what I went through. I
Yeah.
had certain people in the organization that I looked up to, that I wanted to be like, and all of them let me down in big ways,
Yeah.
really big ways. And I really changed. And I was career coaching at that time, and I really changed my narrative with my clients on how we talked about mentors and people in your
Yeah.
sphere and all of that. And I talk about it very differently than most other career coaches, because I always put the caveat that these are real people and they're going to let you down. So anybody that you currently have on a pedestal that you think might save you, that has promised you something, that wants to pull you, whatever it is,
Yeah.
do not bank on that at all.
Yep.
Like, you cannot bank on people because you just don't know what's going to happen. And at the end of the day, they're going to look out for themselves as well before they're going to look out for somebody else, because that's just human
Yeah.
nature, as we've been talking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I also have to give a shameless plug for myself, because this
I love
podcast
it.
obviously is called Control Your Career. One of my higher ticket coaching items is called Control Your Career. And that is really the message that I try to put out to clients and to ambitious professionals: is you need to control your career. So many of us, and I would say especially in that millennial age bracket,
Yep.
we were pushed into certain career paths for a lot of different reasons. For our parents, we went to college and, we liked a professor and they pushed us into a path, friends, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing a lot now at this point, especially post pandemic, going, I don't like this work. I don't like where I'm at. I don't like what I'm doing. And this is such a
Yeah.
common thing that I hear. So I love that you're talking about this because I think that so many people are in that place of, I need to rediscover who I am and take on a new career path that's really going to make me happier, or allow me to grow in a way that I wasn't thinking about. So, anyway, if that
Totally.
sounds like you might want to do a clarity call with me. See if I'm a good coach.
Well, and I will tell you not to, for full disclosure, Julia did not tell me that was one of her product, but I will tell y'all, whoever's considering it, the only reason I went and I've grown 3 levels in the organization in 9 years is because I was coached properly on how to control my career. So I'm just whoever is considering that, like nobody will hold your hand there because
Mhm.
whoever you're leaving a gap for.
Mhm.
So they're not going to help you as much as they love you, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
whatever that, I don't know what it costs. I don't know what it is, but I'm telling y'all, if you can learn how to control your career and really be able to scale within the organization, big, small, public, private. Like, listen, and this is not because of me, it's because of how I was coached. Because I controlled my career, I was when I became a VP here, I was the youngest VP in the country. It's not because I was
Mm.
better, because I was better equipped to control the path, right?
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
food for thought.
Yes, yes. And I did not, Johnny and I did not coordinate this.
You
He
did
is not
not.
one of
You
my
did
clients.
not. Just worked out.
It's just worked out in the conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's wrap it up. I think we have given everybody so much to consider through this episode. But if you could give current employees any advice to be successful in their position and specifically with their manager, what would that be?
Um, I would give 2 pieces. I would give the age old, be true to yourself. Um, in today, you mentioned it just briefly just now. I feel like we have a lot of people that are in the 25 to 45-year-old range that are caught, that have,
Mhm.
that have gotten into a career, that are at a point where they're living a life that their mortgage depends on it, their family depends on it, and their passion is not in it. And I feel like you can only go so far there.
Mhm.
Um, and it doesn't mean you have to just completely 180, but I think being
Right.
honest, there's I think a lot of people that work in a lot of organizations, you'd be very surprised at what other career opportunities exist based on what your true passion is. Right. So I
Mhm.
would encourage you to be true to yourself and just have that conversation. And then the other part of that is like, I would seek counsel on how to have those tough conversations with your leadership. Sometimes it's really hard, every leader is different, and candidly every leader is different every minute of every day because they're dealing with 97 things, some good, some bad, some tensious, some great, some celebratory, right? um I think just seeking wise counsel, from people that have had those conversations with leaders in the organization, maybe not even yours, maybe it's just,
Mhm.
hey, I'm about to have a really tough conversation. Find a mentor that you can that has done what you're trying to do in some
Yes.
shape, form, or capacity. I gotta tell y'all, like, I'm blown away, even at my organization. I have yet to find in 12 years me reaching out to one person that it's like, hey, I want to run something by you, or hey, can you mentor me on how to have this conversation? Whatever. I have yet to get a no. And it's
Mhm.
not because the organization is great. It's just because I think people operate in silos unnecessarily. And I think if you're just
Yes.
willing to just take the step of faith a little bit, to just reach out to somebody that's like, they don't even know you. They could live right. Like, I live in Texas. They could live in Michigan. They don't know me from a hole in the wall, right? But if I just
Mhm.
reach out and say, hey, this is who I am. I know you did this, this, and this a couple years ago. Can I have a 15-minute pocket of time in the next couple weeks, I want to have a conversation professionally, and I want to come across well. And I would just encourage you to, like, you don't have to go all 180. You don't have to be like, well, that
Mhm.
my leader's got to figure it out. Type of thing. Have the conversation with a mentor or somebody that can coach you through having those tough conversations. And every single time somebody's had a tough conversation with me as a leader, I have more respect for them, whether I like the conversation or not, because I know the conversation's hard.
Yeah.
Like it's hard, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
even though it takes courage to do it, I tell people all the time, like having courageous conversations, increases your Q score with me,
Mhm.
because I know how much angst that takes to fight through and have it anyway. And hopefully you work for a leader that, that respects that courage and that grit to be able to have the tough conversations, even if it may not be something they want to hear. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yes. Ah, Jon, this has been such an amazing conversation. Thank you so much. I'm going to put your LinkedIn profile in the blog post for this episode so that people can connect with you, follow you. You post some amazing content on LinkedIn, so I highly recommend that people do that. But thank you so much for being a guest and taking the time to be here.
Of course, my pleasure.